Yo, what's good, guys? It's Shane, and today we'll be predicting the 2024 to 2025 Eastern Conference NBA standings. Let's get straight into it. So the first seed in the East is pretty obvious and almost consensual after Boston Celtics. Last season, they finished with 64 wins and were far and away the first seed in the East by a big margin, having 14 games on the second seed Knicks, who had 50 wins. Going into the playoffs, they won not only the East, but the finals as well, pretty convincingly, only losing 3 games, which means they only lost 21 games that entire season. Going into this season, the roster hasn't changed since they just won a championship and re-signed everyone, but this roster compared to the rest of the East is still insane, and I believe they can easily get the first seed again, not by as big of a margin, but they can definitely still get it. For the second seed, I have the New York Knicks. Let's address the elephant in the room, Mikal Bridges. As most of us may know, they acquired Mikal in the trade over the offseason, sending the Nets 5 first-round picks, a first-round pick swap, a second-round pick, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mamadi Diakite, and Shake Milton. This may seem like a heavy haul for a player like Mikal, but keep in mind, it was worth it. The Knicks finished with a 50-32 record in the 23-24 season, but with the addition of Mikal, this win count will increase drastically. The defensive versatility he brings to that team will be huge. Not to mention that they already have OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and a bunch of other great defenders. The defense is going to be crazy, as well as their offense, since Mikal is a two-way player and can add that offensive punch if necessary, and take some of the load off of Jalen Brunson. Julius Randle will also be returning from his injury that he suffered last season, so we'll see how he fits in with the roster too. Coming in at the third seed, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I'm a Sixers fan, and I've seen a lot of the debates going on of who's going to be better, the Sixers or Knicks, but I believe the Sixers will be worse by a slim margin, regardless of my fandom. The addition of Paul George will be massive for them, taking a lot of the scoring load off of Joel Embiid and taking some of the ball handler responsibilities off of Tyrese Maxey. Essentially, they're replacing Tobias Harris, who's more or less a negative for them, with Paul George. Still a great two-way player and all-star caliber player, even at his age of 33, I think he may be. You look at the depth of the Sixers as well. They added players like Caleb Martin, Reggie Jackson, Jared McCain, Andre Drummond, and they re-signed Kyle Lowry. I think this team can go really far and win at least 55 games and even make some noise in the playoffs. At the fourth seed, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. When you have Giannis and Dame on your team, it's pretty difficult to go against you. Going into this season, they'll have their first full year under Doc Rivers. They'll hopefully have fixed the growing pains that Giannis and Dame had playing last season, but especially Dame, since he had a down year last season, only averaging 25 points per game on 44% from the field. So if we see a healthy Bucks team with Giannis and Dame playing like themselves, this team will be great in the regular season. They also added pieces like Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr., which will help their three-point shooting and depth overall. Last season, they started off with Adrian Griffin as the head coach for the first half of the season and ended with Doc Rivers for the second half. But since they had a full offseason with him and found ways to make the pairing of Giannis and Dame more effective, this will be a very, very good season for the Bucks. For the fifth seed, I have the Orlando Magic. Everyone's expecting a jump from Paolo Banchero, not only on the offensive end, but the defensive end as well. They added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the offseason, which will help them dramatically since their spacing last season sucked. Having KCP and this added spacing will open up driving lanes and unpack the paint, which will give Paolo much more opportunities to score in the paint, which equates to more points for him and the team. They'll also be making Jalen Suggs a full-time point guard, so we'll see how that turns out. But one of the keys to their success will depend on Franz Wagner. Last season, he shot an abysmal 33% from 3, which cooked their spacing. If he can bring that up to at least 36% or just get back to normal and how he was shooting prior to that season, their spacing will benefit drastically, which will ultimately make them a better team. For the sixth seed, I chose the Cleveland Cavaliers. This Cavs team has had basically 50 wins ever since acquiring the offensive talent that is Donovan Mitchell, and I believe that this year it will be one of those years. We didn't see any drastic moves from them during the offseason, but they'll still remain a decent team. A shooting lead from Evan Mobley or an offensive lead overall will make this team significantly better, but we cannot bank on that. I still believe in their double big lineup with Mobley and Jarrett Allen, but it won't win them a championship. Instead, it'll earn them the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. At the 7th seed, I have the Indiana Pacers. They didn't really make any moves in the offseason besides re-signing TJ McConnell, but this team is still decent. The offense of Tyrese Halliburton is so good, and it raises the offense as a team by so much that they'll end up still being a good team and making some noise in the East. They also still have Pascal Siakam, and this will be their first full year with them, so we'll see how that goes. But overall, they have essentially the same roster. I don't think they'll regress, but we've seen the East teams that are above them improve or just be better. Therefore, their seeding will drop from last year. Coming in at the 8th seed, I chose the Miami Heat. The Heat somehow still managed to be like the AC every single year, and I don't think anything is going to change for them this year. They also never make any roster changes, so their ceiling is pretty low. Jimmy Butler is still an amazing player and is definitely all-star caliber, but he just doesn't try in the regular season, and then he turns into MJ during the playoffs, and this isn't a winning formula. Now, on the other hand, there's Bam Adebayo. I bought a lot of stock in Bam, and I think he'll be great in the upcoming year. He's consistently in DPOY conversations, is great on offense, can pass, can score, but the one thing he's missing is shooting. If he begins to shoot threes and make them consistently even at league average percentage, it'll make the Heat a much better team. I'm also expecting a leap from Jaime Jaquez and Terry Rozier to show up in his first full season with the team. At the 9th seed, I have the Atlanta Hawks. They're mid every year and always end up in the play-in range. They've gotten worse with the loss of DeJounte Murray, but in a way, this is addition by subtraction. The duo of Trae Young and DeJounte was horrible, so without him, I think the Hawks could look better. They also had the first pick, picking Zachary Ricochet, which can be a very valuable asset for them from the jump, providing them with a very talented young wing. You also have Jalen Johnson, who could take a massive leap and potentially be their second best player behind Trae Young. He has much more of an opportunity for this team than he did last time and can make the Hawks a much better team. At the 10th seed, I have the Charlotte Hornets. This may be a bit surprising to some, but I believe the Hornets can make that play-in push. However, all of this relies on one man staying healthy, and that's LaMelo Ball. If he's healthy, this will work, but he always ends up getting injured, so this is a huge what if. Brandon Miller will definitely take a leap in this game, which will help the team out as well. They're getting Miles Bridges back, too, who's a great wing and will help them out significantly. So if LaMelo's ankles and knees don't fall apart, they can be a pretty decent team. At the 11th seed, I have the Detroit Pistons. Last season, they had one of the worst NBA seasons of all time and were very, very painful to watch. They won a 28-game losing streak and improved to be the most unserious team in basketball. Regardless, they added a promising young rookie in Ron Holland and acquired Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. to add to their spacing, which was non-existent last season, which contributed to most of their failures. With the addition of this spacing, Cade Cunningham will have much more room to operate and will elevate his offensive game. With that being said, he'll take a big leap, and the Pistons as a whole will get better with progression from guys like Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren. Adding Tobias and Tim Hardaway Jr. will add to not only their three-point shooting, but their offense as a whole and a little bit of their defense as well. Coming in at the 12th seed, I have the Toronto Raptors. I expect another leap from Scottie Barnes after making his first All-Star team last season, and Emmanuel Quickley will be big for them as well. He was very good for them last season. He'll continue with it this year. They also have RJ Barrett, who's amazing for them last season after they traded for him, and they're hoping he can keep it up this upcoming year. He also shot great from three, which they pray and hope that he can continue with this year. Now, I honestly think the 10th, 11th, and 12th seeds are interchangeable, and I wouldn't be mad at any of the orders, but this is just how I think it'll end up going. At the 13th seed, I have the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls have finally started tanking since trading DeMar DeRozan and acquired a rookie in Montas Buzelis, who has great potential to add to their team immediately. Zach LaVine will have a bounce-back year and prove to everyone that he's still a top shooting guard in the league, and Lonzo Ball is coming back to be an effective two-way point guard for them. However, he might be rusty and have to shake some of the rust off, and they traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, which is a very puzzling move in hindsight, but maybe they see something I don't. Giddey is one of the worst starters in the league, while Alex Caruso is a great perimeter defender and a very valuable role player. Regardless, the Bulls are going to be pretty bad, which they likely intend to be. At the 14th seed, I have the Washington Wizards. Obviously, they suck. They were one game better than the Pistons last season, which says a lot. Regardless, they got the second pick and selected Alex Sarr, which will be an important piece for them in this upcoming season. but they have a duo of Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole who won't take them far at all. Corey Kispert will be very good for them, and he's one of my favorite players on the team. But other than that, this roster sucks, and they won't do much at all next season. At dead last, coming in at the 15th seed, I have the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets finally started tanking, and now they're one of the favorites to get Cooper Flagg in the upcoming draft. They traded Mikal Bridges for the assets mentioned earlier in the video, so they got a lot of draft capital and some players too. But they're being led by Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton, which wouldn't bring any team far at all. Cam Thomas will definitely have an offensive jump, and he'll average at least 25 points per game this season with the absence of Mikal Bridges and having a much heavier offensive load and burden put on him. Unfortunately, these are empty stats and won't lead to any wins, but at least he's getting his. And those are my Eastern Conference standings for the 2024 to 2025 NBA season. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'll see y'all later.